Dodge Grand Caravan. I'm going to show you how to change the CV axle. First thing you're going to do is open up the vehicle, and then you're going to come down here and you're going to put the emergency brake on, push that all the way down. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to chalk your tires, get something under there, and then from there you're going to come up and you're going to loosen your lugs. After you've loosened your lugs, you're going to jack up the car, put it on jack stands if it's not on a lift. Once you have it up, you're going to remove those lug nuts the rest of the way, and you're going to pull your tire off. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to come up here, and on this strut we're going to loosen up these two nuts. We just want to, you know, put our impact wrench on there and make sure that those can loosen up. If not, we're going to zap them with some PB Blaster or something just to lubricate them. And once we have those loosened up, we're not going to take them off. We're going to come through here and we're going to pop these bolts. There's one on the top and one on the bottom of the caliper. So one on the back side here and one on the back side here. And then we're going to take that and we're going to hang that up and out of the way. But we do want to loosen those up so it's not in the way while we're trying to loosen those up. From there, we're going to remove this key here, this Cotter key, and take that out, and then we're going to remove this nut here as well. So I had to blast these with some PB Blaster. They were not coming off. Sit for a few hours, and now I've got both of these, so they're loose. And then we can go to the back ones here. And this is a 21mm. So these were a 21mm, and this is a 13/16 on the back of the caliper. And now we're going to remove both of these, and then I use my impact wrench on the bottom one. I got that loosened up, but I did just screw it in a few times just so that it's holding. And then we're going to take this off. We just don't want it to drop straight out. And we're going to get this, and then I'm going to tie this up to the strut. And because you have your emergency brake on, that caliper is going to be tight, so you're going to have to pop that off, and then it'll loosen up, and then you can put your emergency brake back in. And once we have that caliper out of the way, we are going to pull this cotter pin out. So I've straightened it, and we're going to have to just work it out. And we're going to take this large nut off, and it is 1 1/4 inches. So we're going to put that on there, and then you can use a breaker bar. I'm just going to use and then we're just going to make sure axle pushes in. This one does. Pull this off. And then when you're pushing, if this is totally wedged in there, you can just take a screwdriver or something like that gets up in here, and then just pound it with a hammer a few times. Next, we're going to take this nut off, and you might have to put another wrench on the other side. These ones seem like they're in there pretty hard, so it's coming off without doing any wrench on the other side. And now this is in there tight. You're going to want to have a tendency to pound it, and you probably could because it's rounded, but it's always suggested that you're going to put this nut on, and then you're going to give it a few whacks to push it out the other side. Now, these ones took some serious pounding. They were in there pretty tight, and once we get those pounded through, then we can just remove these nuts. And then you can see the splines right there, and that's what kind of keeps it in place. Next, we're going to take this rotor and knuckle assembly. I put a couple of the lug nuts on here, and we're just going to wiggle this and get this CV axle to pull out and this rotor to come across. So I'm going to use 2 hands for this. So we're going to pull this out from the strut, and then while I'm doing that, when that comes out, we're going to come down here and we're going to push in on the CV axle and pull that. And this one's a little bit more challenging because our CV axle is actually broken, so this is pushing out. So I'm going to have to take something to pry this and push that back through. So what I found is the back of my wrench here and a hammer. There we go. And now this minivan wasn't moving or anything. This whole CV axle is broken. Now we're going to come under here, and then we're going to have to pry this end out the back end of the axle. Now you might be able to get away using a large screwdriver here. That did not work for me, so I put this large pry bar back there, and I did get it. So I came in here, got that pry bar up in there, and then wedged it, and got it starting to move. And I'm just going to be able to pull it out now. And then I have a drip pan under here. You can see it's starting to drip transmission fluid. To get that started, you can just put two hands on here. You can give it a pull. Watch out for your brake line. And then this boot right here is probably going to get hung up here. But you can at least get it started. Wiggle it out. There, I got it. So it's out. You can see the transmission fluid's coming. Now I've removed it. It's draining out. So this is an extremely tight fit, so what I've done is there was a bolt right here. I removed that so I can move this bracket over a little bit so that I can slide it out. That way I don't have to worry about breaking that line in the back. Now that I removed this bolt right here, it was a 13mm socket. Once that came, this just gave a little bit more room, and I was able to get that axle out. So you can see. See, this is totally broken right here. Once this axle broke, the vehicle wouldn't move, so we were kind of dead. So if you notice your vehicle's not moving here, this was a big lug. You got the new one out. Don't set it anywhere where you're going to get a bunch of rocks and gravel inside the teeth there. We don't want to jam that into the transmission if it's all dirty. And then you do want to compare to make sure that they're the same size. Something looks funky here, and I'm not sure if it's all stretched out or what the reason is. But this bar right here, you can see, is longer on the old one than on the new one. So we might have been given the wrong replacement, so we're gonna have to check that out. I did get this front CV axle, and it's 25 1/8. I went through and I was checking online. I checked a whole bunch of different specs. It is compressed length 25 1/8, so this is the correct one. And then I kept searching, and I found that this is the one that fits the 2008 to 2010. It's a little bit longer, and it is the incorrect CV axle. So I'm going to put the correct one in, and that might be a reason why it did break. And you're going to see this little ring right here. That's going to hook into the transmission. So we're going to make sure that we get our caliper out of the way. And then we're just going to slide this back in. Take this, and you're going to slightly get it in there, and then you're just going to give it a little spin, and you'll feel those splines line up. So you can, once you get there, you can feel it. It'll actually drop into place. That's how you know you got it. And then we're just going to make sure we have this straight, and we're just going to pound it in. Back here. And then once we know we got that in all the way, and you want to make sure that you get that that little ring to connect in with the transmission. And once that's in, you're good to go in that aspect, and then we'll start putting this back together. Is it going?
Yep.
And then we're just going to tighten this bolt right here. So we'll get that tightened in. Okay. Then we're going to take this nut off. And then we're going to get these splines. We're going to push these back through the hub bearing. And then we're going to make sure we can get those splines. We're going to end up spinning this axle. We want to make sure that this is in here fairly close. And we're going to spin that around until those splines line up. So then you're going to rock that. You do have to be careful, because when it does pop through, because I just popped it through a second ago, I pulled it back out, but I actually pinched my finger in the back. So when it does find the splines, it's going to shoot through right away. So make sure your finger's not back there. Pinch my finger pretty good. And then as you can see here, it's in here tight, flush there. We've got that bolt tightened down. We're going to end up just going back in reverse now. We're going to move that control arm. We're going to rock it around. I'm going to get those bolts back in. There we go. There's one. And then you're gonna move this control arm. And so you might have to, like here, we gotta push it back in that way. There we go. And there we go. So once we get those in, we're just gonna put those nuts on the back side. And then when we tighten those down, it'll pull those splines back in and it'll tighten that back up. Now we're just gonna tighten this up. And then we'll tighten that up with a torque wrench. And we're gonna go do the bottom one as well. So we're gonna put on that washer, and then we're gonna put on our axle hub nut here. And it's a 1 1/4 inch. Get that on, and then it's gonna torque to 180 foot-pounds. Next, you're going to put that little spring on there, and then you're going to have your little loop here. And what you're going to do is you're going to take your Cotter key and push it through. And here it's not really lining up, so I am going to have to slide that nut over. Just give it a little tad bit tightening. So then we're going to put that little spring on there and a little cap. And then once we have that, we're going to put our Cotter key in there. And if you're having an issue because your Cotter key's been bent out a little bit, you might have to take a pliers and just give it a quick squeeze so you can get it to push back through there. So I just grabbed that with my pliers because it wasn't going through, and I tightened it and twisted it back on itself. And then once you get it started, you can give it a little tap with the hammer or your pliers. And then make sure when you're coming through on the other side, I see it feels like it's getting caught up. Look to see what you're getting caught up on so that we're not wrecking anything here. So it looks like it's catching on that. So we might have to pop that back just a little bit. So we don't want to break that cap. Once we get that key through, then we just take the ends and bend those back. Okay, so now we're going to take this bolt, we're going to put that caliper. I got the caliper put on here, and we're going to make sure that get that threaded in there, and then make sure it's threading before you let it go. You're going to have a tendency to want to pull back out the other way because we don't want to let it go and then have it pull down and wreck your line. So that one's holding. So we're going to start the other one on the bottom, and you just put both of those in. We've got to take off any of those lugs that we put on because we're going to be putting the tire back on. And here's one of the issues of working outside is it's starting to rain on us. And so we're going to rip these off real quick, get that tire on. Once we get our tire on, we're going to hand do our lugs. Remember, you want to get them started to make sure that you're not cross-threading them. These are really easy to cross-thread. So just start all 5 of these. And we'll zap them with the gun. And started. And then what we'll do is we'll finish torquing these. And then we'll torque these to 110 foot-pounds. Yeah. And we're going to do the star pattern. And then we have that transmission fluid. We're going to have to check the transmission fluid. We're going to have to add some. We lost a lot of transmission fluid. And Then we're gonna check to make sure the tranny's good, and we'll give her a test drive. There was other issues down here. There's a front ball joint that's having some issues. This car hasn't ran for 1.5 years. So before we spent all the money changing everything, control arm and tie rods and everything, we figured we'll get this CV axle done, make sure that was the only issue, and then we're going to go through and we're going to change out all the front end parts on both sides. Hopefully this helps, and as always, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.